about that and all of the machinations of the Tory leadership contest with my next guest, Conservative MP Andrew Bowie, who is backing Rishi Sunak, the former chancellor, who is, of course, still the front runner, according to the number of MPs who are publicly backing him, but not necessarily with Conservative Party members. Good morning to you, Andrew.
Morning, Julia.
Good morning. Thank you very much indeed for joining us on this swelteringly hot day. Let's talk first of all about this ballot. 20 MPs have to back an MP to get on that first ballot tomorrow. The vote's going to be at lunchtime. 30 would be needed to get through the second round on Thursday. There are an awful lot of MPs that don't hit that. Right now, it's only Rishi Sunak, Penny Mordaunt and Tom Tugendhat who've got the 20 to get onto the first ballot. It's likely, though, that others will come forward. They don't have to have their names publicly. There is also an issue that some of those perhaps dark horse candidates, some of the lesser-known candidates, might not get a chance to go through to the next round. Is that about the right number, do you think?
Well, I think so. But, Julia, if I've learned anything from the last leadership election, is that we're in the very early stages of this contest, and I don't think we should be predicting anything. I think over half of the parliamentary party are still to declare publicly their support for any candidate. So right now, as we are sitting on Tuesday morning, it's pretty difficult to tell exactly where each candidate is. What is clear is that Rishi Sunak, the candidate that I'm supporting, has the support from the largest number of members of Parliament. I think that's because they see that he delivered when he was Chancellor of the Exchequer during the heat of the COVID crisis, and they trust him to continue to deliver in the position of Prime Minister. That's why I'm certainly backing him. OK, I'm going to talk more about Rishi Sunak in just a moment, but in terms of how long this process is going to take, I was been reading out earlier a message posted on social media by Martin Lewis, a money-saving expert. Basically, he's disappointed that we're going to have to wait until 5th of September to get a new Prime Minister. He says it's too late. The catastrophically high October price cap announcement a fortnight before will cause panics, and we'll find out before October that we're going to be seeing these price rises. The Ofgem boss talking about more than £3,200 a year. Those direct debits are going to be coming out this summer ahead of that announcement. These are sums that are simply not affordable for the average family who's just been making ends meet. People who've, two parents, with the kids going out to work, both working full time, they're not going to be able to keep the lights on and keep the heating on in the autumn with that. And yet we're going to be sitting around having hustings for Tory party leaders, contenders. Doesn't the party need to speed this up? We are in an economic crisis. People are genuinely scared about their family finances, losing their homes and the like. Do we not need to speed this up? Look, I understand completely. People are worried and frightened. As a constituency MP, I hear people all the time coming into my surgeries and worried about how they're going to put food on the table for their families, or how they're going to fill up their car, or how they're going to heat and light their homes. As you said just a few minutes ago, the rules have been set out by the 1922 committee. We will be finished the parliamentary stage by as early as the middle of next week. And then, under the constitution of the party as it is, it's up to the Conservative Party members to determine who their next leader is. I think it's quite important that is the case. Conservative Party members are the ones who go out and knock doors, deliver leaflets and support us in the country. I would like it to be quicker, obviously, because, as you say, we're facing great challenges as a country. The country will still have government through the summer.
But a government not making any major decisions?
Well, I mean, that's what the Prime Minister said, but I think it's important that the members of the Cabinet look to their responsibilities, the Prime Minister to this country, and if it is determined that action can and should be taken to support people in this country, then it should be taken. But in terms of dealing with the issues as we move forward, I mean, I'm very determined that the only candidate that's in any position to actually do that competently,
we will come back. We will come back to that. But the thing is, it's a bit rich for the Conservative Party to say, look, we really want to tackle all these big issues. This is a big crisis. This is why we need to tackle it. And say, oh, excuse me, I know you can't afford to put food on the table. I know you're worried about losing your home because you can't afford to put the lights on. I know you're getting into debt. I know you can't afford to put fuel in your car. But could you wait until the 6th of September, the day after we've bothered to elect a new Prime Minister, before we do anything about it? It's the 12th of July. People can't wait. People live on their finances. They don't live year to year. They live not just month to month, they live week to week. Does this not make the Conservative Party, frankly, look out of touch?
Look, I don't think so. And I think that having demonstrated our ability to deliver furlough in a matter of days at the beginning of the COVID crisis, developed and delivered by Rishi, by the way, I think we've demonstrated that we can act quickly and nimbly when we need to do so in the national interest. And I'm absolutely certain that we'll continue to do so when we get a new Prime Minister before or on the 5th.
We'll all just wait. Okay, you want it to be Rishi Sunak now. Until this morning, well, late last night, he was the only leading candidate at all who was not promising instant tax cuts of some sort. Today, the front page of the Time, Rishi Sunak will guarantee today to cut taxes once inflation has fallen. This is we're seeing the sort of a groundswell of support going towards Liz Truss, the Foreign Secretary, as she's finally declared. He says the question of when, not if, he reduces the tax burden. His argument is we need to tackle inflation before we can have tax cuts. But would not cutting fuel duty in particular, almost 50% of every time we fill up our cars and the lorries that deliver the food and all the goods to us, would not a fuel duty cut, as we've seen in most countries in Europe, more than just a few pence like he offered us in the spring statement, would not that actually reduce inflation? Because most of inflationary pressure is coming from fuel prices.
Well, if you look at the plans that Rishi's going to set out in greater detail later today, plans to reduce inflation, get the economy on a sound footing, and then be able to cut taxes, they've been endorsed by Norman Lamont. And if you read William Hague in the Times this morning, he says that Margaret Thatcher would be running a very sceptical eye over some of these promises of immediate tax cuts because they would ultimately damage the economy. You know, cutting taxes now would actually pose the threat of increasing inflation and actually adding to
depends which tax.
Facing the country.
It depends which tax. If the largest pressure on people's domestic budgets and everything we buy in the shops, everything that's transported, whether it's a supermarket, whatever you buy, is the cost of fuel, and half of the cost of fuel is what's going into a tax take to the Treasury coffers. If the Prime Minister or the Chancellor cut that fuel duty right now, that would reduce inflationary pressures. That would have a spiralling effect downwards on inflation, not upwards.
Well, you only have to look at Rishi's record in terms of fuel duty. He kept the freeze on fuel duty in all the years he was
Every chancellor's had to do it. It's politically untenable not to.
5 pence off a litre.
Did you notice that? Do you remember going to the fuel pumps that week and going, goodness me, it's so much better? That was barely noticed by consumers.
Yes, and actually, we're looking into right now whether or not retailers have actually passed that on to the consumers, and that's something.
But even if they did, it was eaten up with inflation in fuel prices in 1 week. It was meaningless. Ireland's cut it by double figures. France has. Germany has.
Julia, that's why we've got to get inflation under control. And we're not going to do that by arbitrarily cutting taxes across the board. I mean, one of the plans I read yesterday would have taken the equivalent of 2% GDP out of the economy, the sheer scale of tax cuts that were being promised. No, I think what we've got to get is a sound plan to get the economy under control so we can then go to the British people and say, look, we are now in a position to cut the tax burden that you're enduring right now. We are in a position to grow the economy. And frankly, I think that's what the British people deserve and probably expect from their next Prime Minister.
Again, I've made the point about fuel duty, which affects every single person, whether you've got a car or not. Every single thing you buy is going to be affected by that. The government is, by the way, getting an awful lot more in fuel duty and in VAT on fuel than they expected to have, so that money should be available anyway. But then we've got things like VAT in hospitality. Loads and loads of pubs, restaurants, hospitality businesses they just scraped through lockdowns and furlough. They just scraped through being told, last Christmas, there isn't going to be any furlough because there's no lockdown. But by the way, no one's going to actually turn up for any of their Christmas or New Year bookings, which is when they make most of their money. They've just been scraping through, and now they've been hit by massive fuel prices. They're saying VAT, a VAT cut for them would make a massive difference. Again, it's all very well saying when we dealt with this problem, we'll deal with that. This is the problem people are dealing with right now.
Well, you don't need to make the argument about cutting VAT or supporting hospitality or supporting the British people to Rishi Sunak. It was Rishi that developed and delivered the furlough scheme that saved 11 million jobs. It was Rishi that delivered Eat Out to Help Out, which kept hospitality open during the summer of 2020. It was Rishi Sunak that cut VAT on hospitality. So I think all of those arguments he gets absolutely. But the fact is that we're not going to be able to take any of these decisions unless we actually get inflation under control. That is the pressing item for whatever person is elected into the position of Prime Minister. And the only person that's demonstrated their ability to grasp the big issues, to deal with the big economic threats facing us as a country, is Rishi Sunak, who in his 3 years, as Chancellor of the Exchequer, delivered in the heat of a crisis for the British people, saving over 11 million jobs and keeping this country growing through the biggest crisis we've faced since 1945. Okay.
And why do you think, under a poll of Conservative Party members for the Con Home site, why has Penny Mordaunt, Trade Minister, not even in the Cabinet, why has she polled much higher than Rishi Sunak, given his track record?
Look, I think that we're in the very early stages of this competition. Rishi hasn't even officially launched his campaign. That's coming up later today. All the candidates are going to be tested by members of Parliament and then out in the country by Conservative Party members. And look, we're blessed in the Tory party that we've got a wealth of talent and a broad range, a really diverse range of candidates going into this leadership election, far more diverse than any slate of candidates the Labour Party have ever had. And, you know, whoever wins will, I'm sure, do a good job in terms of uniting us and leading us forward. But my view is that Rishi Sunak is almost definitely the best person for that job.
And certainly everyone thinks he will be one of those two on that final ballot, because we've got a Labour motion of no confidence later today. I think many people expecting that will fail. Do want to ask you about another news story, though, very briefly. So Mo Farah, one of our top Olympians, he was has revealed in a documentary that he was trafficked to the UK as a 9-year-old child and forced to work as a domestic servant. Mo Farah, not even his real name. An extraordinary revelation. What do you make of that story?
Yeah, extraordinary. An extraordinary story, a deeply sad story. And, you know, dreadful that it's taken until now that he's felt that he could actually speak about it. This just demonstrates the real tragedy that is human trafficking, something that, you know, governments for many years have tried to get a grip on. It's one of the reasons why we need to deal with those pernicious groups that are trafficking people across the channel in those boats. And that's what this government, and indeed whoever becomes Prime Minister, will continue to do. But no, my heart goes out to Mo Farah. He really is a legend in this country, somebody that deserves all the respect and the honours that have been bestowed on him. And to read that this morning was incredibly troubling, deeply saddening, and yeah, utterly horrendous.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us, Andrew Bowie, Conservative MP.